I've written the opening section, following the outline, and stopping at the required point. A trembling hand grabbed my wrist before I could even say, "Grandma." The front door flew open just wide enough for my grandmother Elena to pull me inside with surprising strength. The second I crossed the threshold, she slammed the door shut, locked the deadbolt, then reached for 2 more locks I didn't even remember being there. "Come in, hurry," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't let them see you." I stared at her. "Who?" Instead of answering, she rushed to the front window and pulled the curtains closed so tightly that not a sliver of daylight remained. Her breathing was uneven. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. "Grandma, what's going on?" She turned toward me with wide, frightened eyes. "Quiet." Before I could ask another question, footsteps sounded on the porch. Then I heard a familiar voice. "Mom, it's me." My stomach dropped. "My father." He knocked twice, casually at first. "Mom, I know you're home." Every muscle in Grandma's body stiffened. She pointed toward the hallway, silently ordering me out of sight. I had stopped by without calling because something hadn't felt right for months. Dad kept telling me Grandma wanted to be alone. Every time I suggested visiting, he had the same explanation. "She gets overwhelmed now," he'd say. "It's better if we give her space." I believed him. Now I was hiding in her hallway, while she acted like opening the door could destroy both of us. Dad tried the doorknob. Locked. His knock became louder. "Mom." Grandma pressed one finger against her lips. Neither of us breathed. After nearly a minute, the knocking stopped. I heard his footsteps retreat down the porch, followed by a car door closing and an engine starting. Only after the sound faded into the distance did Grandma slowly lower her hand. I stepped into the living room, finally able to look around. Something was wrong. Family photographs that had always covered the mantel were gone, leaving faded rectangles on the wallpaper where frames had hung for years. A stack of unopened envelopes sat neatly on a side table, some yellowed with age, dust-covered corners Grandma had always kept spotless. Then something else caught my eye. A thick folder protruded slightly from beneath a sofa cushion, as if someone had hidden it in a hurry. "Grandma," I said carefully, "why were you hiding me from Dad?" She didn't answer. Instead, she crossed the room, checked the front window again, then locked the back door for good measure. "You haven't answered my calls in months," I continued. "Dad told me you didn't want visitors." She closed her eyes for a moment. "I know what he told you." The words landed harder than I expected. "You know." She nodded. "So, you did want me to come." Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Yes." A cold feeling settled in my chest. If she wanted to see me all this time, then why had every message gone unanswered? Grandma glanced toward the hidden folder but didn't reach for it. Instead, she walked closer until only a whisper separated us. "We don't have much time." "For what?" She looked toward the front door, as if expecting someone to return at any second. Then she said the one sentence that made everything feel even more impossible. "Your father can never know you saw me today." Silvia stared at her grandmother in disbelief. "My father?" she asked quietly. "You're telling me I have to hide from my own father?" Grandma Elena listened for a moment, making sure the sound of Victor's car had truly disappeared before answering. "Yes." The single word carried years of fear. Silvia shook her head. "Grandma, I don't understand. Dad's been taking care of you. He told everyone you needed peace and rest. He's made sure everyone believes that." Silvia searched her grandmother's face for some sign of confusion or memory loss, anything that would explain what she was hearing. Instead, Elena's eyes were clear. "He decides who visits," Elena said, "who calls, which appointments I keep, what I sign, even when I leave this house." Silvia frowned. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried." Grandma walked to the small table beside the sofa and picked up a bundle of unopened envelopes tied together with a ribbon. "These are yours." Silvia untied them. Every envelope carried her name in her grandmother's familiar handwriting. Every one had been returned or never mailed. I wrote to you, Elena whispered, more than once. Silvia flipped through them in stunned silence. I never received any of these. I know. Her grandmother pointed toward the telephone, sitting on a nearby table. Pick it up. Silvia lifted the receiver. Silence. There isn't even a dial tone. He said I didn't need a phone anymore because he handled everything. Silvia slowly set it back down. None of this matched the father she thought she knew. Then Elena opened a kitchen cabinet and removed several prescription bottles. I never agreed to take these, she said. He tells the doctors what I need. Sometimes I don't even know why they're changed. Silvia examined the labels but couldn't tell whether anything was actually wrong. There were no obvious answers, only details that didn't fit together. A car rolled slowly past the front of the house. Elena instantly froze. The pill bottles slipped from her hands and rattled across the counter. She didn't move until the engine faded away. Silvia had never seen her grandmother afraid of an ordinary passing car. Grandma, she said gently, what aren't you telling me? Without speaking, Elena walked to the sofa and reached beneath the cushion toward the hidden folder Silvia had noticed earlier. Her fingertips touched the edge of it. Then headlights swept across the front window. Elena jerked her hand back and looked toward the door, her face turning pale. Silvia followed her gaze. Was Victor simply controlling her grandmother? Or had he hidden something much worse? The next morning, Silvia made a decision. We're not hiding today, she said as she helped her grandmother into her coat. If Dad wants everyone to believe he's taking care of you, then he won't expect you to show up with me. Elena hesitated. He'll be there. You already knew. He always is. They arrived at the local bank just before the scheduled appointment. The lobby was quiet, and a familiar smile greeted them almost immediately. Mom, Victor said warmly as he walked toward them, I wasn't expecting you to bring company. He embraced Elena before she could react, then turned to Silvia with effortless confidence. What a surprise, he said. You should have told me you were visiting. Silvia forced a smile. It wasn't planned. No, Victor replied, studying her for a moment. Apparently not. An employee approached with a welcoming grin. Mr. Victor, we're ready for you and your mother. Silvia noticed the wording immediately. Not Mrs. Elena. Not both of them. Victor led the conversation as though the meeting belonged to him. Inside the office, a banker placed several documents on the table. Elena, Victor said gently, these are the routine papers we discussed yesterday. Grandma reached for them. So I'd like to read. Victor interrupted with a reassuring laugh. You've already seen these, Mom. The banker smiled sympathetically. Your son has been wonderful helping with everything. Silvia watched her grandmother shrink back into her chair. I haven't read them, Elena said quietly. Victor sighed just loudly enough for everyone to hear. Some days are better than others. The room fell silent. The implication hung in the air. Memory problems. Silvia looked at the bank employees. No one questioned him. Instead, they looked at Elena with polite concern. Victor turned to Silvia. You know how difficult this has become. She's been forgetting conversations lately. Silvia glanced down at the paperwork while Victor continued speaking. One signature line caught her attention. The date on the document didn't match the date printed at the top. Another page carried what appeared to be Elena's signature, but the handwriting looked unusually stiff compared to the birthday cards Grandma had written her for years. Can I see that? Silvia asked. Victor calmly slid the papers away. Legal paperwork isn't really your concern. It becomes my concern if Grandma doesn't understand what she's signing. His pleasant expression barely changed. She does understand, she simply needs help remembering. The banker nodded in agreement. We've worked with Mr. Victor for quite some time. Silvia suddenly realized she was the outsider. Everything she said sounded like suspicion. Everything Victor said sounded like care. As the meeting ended, Elena slowly stood beside Silvia. While Victor thanked the employees, Grandma slipped something cold into Silvia's hand. A small brass key. Their eyes met for only a second. "Don't ask here." Silvia closed her fingers around it without a word. Outside, Victor rested a hand on Silvia's shoulder. "You worried for nothing," he said with an easy smile. "Mom's in good hands." Silvia looked at him, then at the key hidden in her palm. For the first time in her life, she wasn't sure she believed her father. That evening, after Victor had gone, Silvia unlocked the old desk drawer the key fit. Inside lay neatly organized copies of legal documents. Grandma looked over her shoulder. The color drained from her face. "I never signed those." Silvia spread the documents across the dining room table, while Grandma Elena disappeared into the hallway and returned with an old metal box. "If we're going to compare them," Elena said, "use these." Inside were birthday cards, tax records, old insurance forms, and a will signed years earlier. Silvia placed them beside the newly discovered documents. The differences became impossible to ignore. Her grandmother's genuine signature flowed naturally across the older papers. The signatures on the newer legal documents looked hesitant, almost copied stroke by stroke. "These aren't the same," Silvia said. "They never were." As they continued sorting through the papers, Silvia found something else tucked between two folders. Unopened letters from a law office addressed to Elena. The envelopes had never been broken open. "Why didn't you answer these?" "I never saw them before today." One letter referenced changes to property ownership. Another listed transfers from savings, accounts Elena didn't recognize. Silvia immediately searched for the attorney, whose name appeared on the documents, and called the office. "This is Silvia," she said after introducing herself. "I believe my grandmother may have signed paperwork she never actually approved." The attorney listened carefully before asking a few questions. When Silvia mentioned specific dates and document numbers, his tone changed. "Those details don't match the file I have," he said. "Please don't destroy anything. I'd like to review every document you found." After ending the call, Silvia finally felt she wasn't imagining the inconsistencies. Someone else saw them too. Late that afternoon, tires crunched across the gravel outside. A car door slammed. Silvia looked through the window. Her father. Victor didn't knock. He opened the unlocked screen door and stepped onto the porch, his face far more serious than she had ever seen. "Elena," he called, "open the door." Neither woman moved. His voice hardened. "I know Silvia is here." Silvia opened the front door just enough to face him. "What do you want?" Victor's eyes immediately searched past her into the house. "The folder," he said. "Give it to me." "What folder?" "Don't play games." Grandma Elena stepped beside Silvia. "No." Victor looked at his mother in disbelief. "You're letting her tear this family apart." "You did that yourself," Elena answered quietly. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Victor pointed toward Silvia. "You have no idea what you're interfering with. Put those papers back where you found them." Silvia slipped her phone into her pocket and quietly started recording. "If there's nothing wrong with them," she asked, "why are you so desperate to get them back?" Victor answered too quickly. "Because those transfer documents are confidential." Silvia held his gaze. "I never said they were transfer documents." The silence that followed was enough. Victor realized what he had admitted. His expression changed instantly. "You're making a terrible mistake," he said, taking a step back. "If you continue this, there will be consequences." He turned, walked to his car, and drove away without another word. Silvia stopped the recording. She finally had evidence that matched the documents on the table. But exposing it would mean exposing her own father. Before she could decide what to do next, her phone rang. It was the attorney. "Silvia," he said without greeting, "I've reviewed the information you sent." She gripped the phone tighter. We need you and your grandmother to come in immediately, including the investigators." The following morning, Silvia and Grandma Elena walked into the attorney's office carrying the metal box, the hidden folder, and every document they had gathered. 2 investigators were already waiting. For the next several hours, they laid every piece of evidence across a conference table. The investigators compared signatures. They reviewed property transfers. They matched dates on bank records against legal filings. Silvia played the recording from Victor's confrontation at the house. One investigator paused the audio after Victor referred to the transfer documents. "He shouldn't have known exactly which documents you were talking about," she said. The attorney nodded. "That statement lines up with what we're seeing here." By the end of the meeting, the picture had become unmistakably clear. Over several years, Victor had isolated Elena from the rest of the family. He intercepted letters before they reached her. He controlled her appointments and communications. He convinced relatives that her memory had become unreliable, making it easy for people to dismiss anything she tried to say. While everyone believed he was sacrificing his own time to care for his aging mother, he quietly used forged signatures and unauthorized legal paperwork to transfer her savings and property into businesses he controlled. Silvia sat in stunned silence. Everything her father had done suddenly made sense. His insistence that no one visit. His explanations for every unanswered phone call. His constant reminders that Grandma wanted to be left alone. None of it had been about protecting Elena. It had been about protecting the fraud. The attorney looked directly at Silvia. If you hadn't visited that day, the final property transfer would likely have been completed within the week. Silvia remembered standing on her grandmother's porch, wondering why she looked so terrified. Now she understood. Grandma hadn't been hiding from strangers. She'd been trying to stop the last chance anyone had to discover the truth from slipping away. When Victor was questioned, he insisted he had only been managing his mother's affairs because she couldn't manage them herself. But every forged signature, every intercepted letter, every financial record, and even his own recorded statements contradicted his explanation. Family members who had trusted Victor gathered over the following weeks to hear the findings. The room was painfully quiet as the evidence was presented. Several relatives admitted they had accepted Victor's version without ever asking Elena what she wanted. Grandma didn't raise her voice. She simply answered every question herself. For the first time in years, no one interrupted her. No one corrected her. No one spoke on her behalf. Silvia watched her grandmother reclaim something far more valuable than the property. She reclaimed her own voice. Authorities froze the disputed assets, while the civil process restored ownership of Elena's home, savings, and remaining estate. Victor was removed from every position, giving him authority over her finances. The criminal investigation moved forward, followed by civil lawsuits seeking to recover everything that had been taken. His reputation as the devoted son collapsed almost overnight. The same community that had praised him now questioned every carefully crafted story he had told. For Silvia, the hardest part wasn't watching her father lose his standing. It was accepting that the man she had trusted had spent years manipulating everyone around him, including her. Still, she knew she had made the only decision she could live with. Over the months that followed, Grandma Elena began inviting relatives into her home again. The missing family photographs returned to the mantel. The phone was reconnected. The unopened letters disappeared, replaced by new ones that finally reached their destination. Silvia visited often, never waiting for an invitation. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they simply sat together on the porch in peaceful silence. Neither of them took those ordinary moments for granted anymore. Looking back, Silvia realized that every lie her father had built depended on one simple assumption, that everyone would keep calling before they came. She hadn't. And that single unexpected visit changed everything. If I had called before visiting, my father would have answered first, and none of us would have ever known the truth.